ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, we will continue where we left off in Surah Alaaq. We covered the five first verses in this surah. Many scholars consider these five verses to be the first part of revelation that the Prophet ﷺ received. And the first command that the Prophet ﷺ is receiving is to recite اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. So this links the importance of reading knowledge, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of all the creations that He has made, mentions the creation of insan, of human beings. Many of the scholars, they say the reason why insan is mentioned specifically, it is because insan is the most noble of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that nobility that Allah Azza wa Jalla has given human beings, it is because of the knowledge that they possess, the knowledge of revelation. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Adam alayhi salam, Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions specifically that Adam alayhi salam was taught. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Adam the names of everything. So this link between human beings and knowledge, it is part of what makes human beings noble. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla reminds the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though with that nobility, اقرأ وربك الأكرم, Allah Azza wa Jalla is Al-Akram. He is the most noble out of everything. This word, Kareem, in Arabic, it has different meanings overlapping each other. Like we mentioned in the last class, one of the meanings is generosity. Another meaning of this word is noble. When Allah Azza wa Jalla says, إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ, the most noble amongst you human beings are the ones that have the most taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this word can come with different meanings, but again, they overlap, because one of the ways that a person becomes noble is through their generosity. If a person is generous, then we usually say that this person is a noble person. Not just generosity in terms of money or wealth, but even the fact that the person is generous with his time, is generous enough to let things go, and so on and so forth. So this generosity or nobility, it is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed Adam alayhi salam with, and Banu Adam, the children of Adam, human beings. And at the same time, Allah Azza wa Jalla is reminding the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam here that Allah Azza wa Jalla is Al-Akram. And Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions one of the many attributes that Allah Azza wa Jalla has, that of knowledge, الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ. So again, Allah Azza wa Jalla is linking it to knowledge. This whole surah, it speaks about many different aspects, but the theme is one and the same. It refers to the nobility through knowledge. الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ, that Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one who has taught writing by pen. عَلَّمَ الْإِنسَانَ مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ. Again, knowledge, Allah Azza wa Jalla taught human beings the things that they did not know. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us, كَلَّا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى. Verily, or nay, verily, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى, mankind has transgressed. This transgression is specified in other parts of the Quran this transgression is against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, in terms of the lies that people have made against Allah. وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ الرَّحْمَنُ وَلَدًا, and they say that Ar-Rahman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has taken a son. لَقَدْ جِئْتُمْ شَيْئًا إِدًّا, you barely come with a very enormous calamity, a very big allegation. So this transgression is both in terms of the belief, where they say things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is also through the actions that because of the disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that many people have, it leads to them feeling that there is no accountability. As a Muslim, as a believer, when we act, whatever we do, we are mindful that we do things the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala approves of. But a person who does not have or does not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their actions often lack this sense of accountability. And this is what Allah Azza wa Jalla refers to in the following verse. كَلَّا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى, verily indeed man has transgressed. أَمْرَهَا وَاسْتَغْنَى, he thinks of himself as self-sufficient. He thinks of himself as self-sufficient, meaning that he does not need a Lord, he does not need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is reflected in the statements of those who disbelieve in Allah throughout the Quran. If you remember the story of Qarun, who had enormous wealth. He had so much money that people around him, they used to say, Ya laytalana mithla ma utiya Qarun. Only if we had the same amount of wealth like Qarun has. And people would be astonished with the wealth that he had. And when people would ask him to give some of that wealth to those who are poor or those who are in need, what was the response of Qarun? He used to say, إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي, that the only way that I have received this, it is not because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is not because of the generosity of Allah and so on and so forth. No, it is because of myself, because of the knowledge that I have. So you will see this throughout the people who deny the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They think of themselves as istilna, that they are self-sufficient, they are not in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why in the following verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them, Inna ila rabbika ruj'a, that verily the return will be to your Lord, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mahma, regardless of how much you deny the existence of Allah, how much you disbelieve in Allah and disbelieve in the messengers, no one can disbelieve in the hard facts of death, that everyone will go down the same path. Everyone before us and those that will come after us, they have all faced the same result in this hayatul dunya, meaning that everyone will come to die. This is why Allah Azza wa Jalla in other parts of the Quran reminds us, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ, that every soul shall taste death. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He speaks to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though at that time the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was still alive, Allah Azza wa Jalla told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ وَإِنَّهُمْ مَيِّتُونَ, that you will come to die and so will they. Even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if anyone was to be saved from death, it would have been the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But because even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to die, it shows us that no one will escape this fate. So, if a person understands that the return will be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this should reflect in their actions, especially a believer, that if you see people around you passing away, if you see people around you, getting sick, entering the hospital, if you see people being killed in wars, or people dropping dead just like that, it should make you reflect, and you should remember your own mortality. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, he used to say that every day I hear Mata Fulan and Mata Fulan, that such a person, such and such a person passed away. And tomorrow I hear about another janazah, and I hear about people passing away. And he used to say, there will surely come a day where people will say, Mata Umar radiallahu anhu, that Umar himself passed away. So if a person understands that the ultimate, the final home will be either in Jannah or in Nar, then the actions reflect this. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to a specific incident that happened to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you remember, we said that the first few verses were revealed as the first revelation. And then this portion that is being read now is later on, where the Prophet ﷺ has been a prophet for some time. So this incident refers to when the Prophet ﷺ would try to pray, yet Abu Jahl and others would try to prevent him from praying. And this shows the evilness of such people. Just a quick announcement, there's a car or two cars, Mazda van and a Civic, that are blocking the way. Please, if you own these cars, please make sure not to block the way. Again, that's a Mazda van and a Civic. So coming back to the story here, we said it shows how evil these people are. Why? Because it is one thing not to pray yourself and not to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But once you actively try to stop others from believing and praying, that this is a completely different level. So this is the level that people like Abu Jahl reached, that they themselves denied Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they did not want other people to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you will see this with the people that are often mentioned in the Quran, that it's not just about them disbelieving themselves, but it is also that they فَصَدُّوا عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ, that they would stand and become an obstacle in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like Fir'aun, that is mentioned in the Quran, when he decided not to believe, and he went beyond and he said, I am your Lord, the Most High. What did he do to the magicians who became Muslims, who became believers? He punished them. Why did he punish them? He killed them in the most gruesome of ways because they believed. So this is the way of these people who are mentioned in the Quran, part of their evilness. So Allah Azza wa Jalla says, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يَنْهَى, have you seen him, meaning Abu Jahl, in some narrations, who prevents? Yanha prevents. What does he prevent? عَبْدًا إِذَا صَلَّى, a slave, a servant, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِذَا صَلَّى, when he wants to pray. أَرَأَيْتَ إِنْ كَانَ عَلَى الْهُدَى, do you see, have you seen that he's acting upon guidance? Is he doing this because he has his own revelation, his own understanding? No. Oh, amara bit taqwa, or that he is doing this or commanding for taqwa. This is to re-emphasize the evilness that this man is only doing that because of his own pride. He is doing that because of his own evilness within him. And then Allah Azza wa Jal continues to describe this man. أَرَأَيْتَ إِن كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. Have you seen if he, Abu Jahl, denies the truth and turns away from the truth? أَلَمْ يَعْلَمْ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَرَى. Does he not know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees? Not only sees him, but sees all his actions, every single thing that he does. And this is part of the iman that Muslims have when we hear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Alim, or He is Al-Sami', or He is Al-Basir. That we know that the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hearing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is like nothing that you can compare to in terms of the creation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of every single thing that a person will do and has done in the past. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَلَّا لَإِن لَمْ يَنْتَهِ لَنَسْمَعًا بِالنَّاصِيَةِ. Nay, if Abu Jahl does not cease, if he does not stop, and it's not just Abu Jahl, but anyone that follows in his footsteps, if such a person does not stop, لَإِن لَمْ يَنْتَهِ لَنَسْمَعًا بِالنَّاصِيَةِ. We will grab him, catch him by the forelock. And the forelock is this front part of the head or face. And Allah Azza wa Jalla says, نَاصِيَةٍ كَاذِبَةٍ خَاطِئَةٍ, describing this forelock, this part, a lying, sinful forelock. Now, we've mentioned this point before, but I want to reiterate it. The Quran is not a book of science. The Quran is not a book of science. We should be very careful when we take verses of the Quran and try to make them fit with science, because science is the understanding that we have of the world today. That understanding of the world that we have today might change tomorrow. And the Quran is eternal, and the knowledge of the Quran is the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the Quran is the speech of Allah. At the same time, some scholars, they've looked into this and they've come with their understanding, saying that نَاصِيَةٍ كَاذِبَةٍ خَاطِئَةٍ, the way that it is being described as being lying and cheatful, when you look into the way that the brain is formed, or the way that it's structured, many specialists even, they say that this front part of the brain is the part that has the personality. It has these the character of either truthfulness or lying. And they've done experiments where they see which parts of the brain is triggered when a person does a certain act. So if you're trying to remember something, they see with their scans which part of the brain lights up or is active, whether you're dreaming and so on and so forth. And they've come to find out that when a person is not telling the truth, the part that is active is this front lock, or this front part of the brain. And again, we say, Allahu A'lam, this is what has been mentioned. It does not necessarily have to be the truth, but it is interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions specifically this part of the head. فَلْيَدْعُ نَادِيَهُ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, let him call his counsel, his supporters. People back then, they used to brag about how they had mal and banoon, wealth and children. They had their own tribe, and no one could touch them. They were untouchable. If you go against them, then my whole tribe will come and they will protect me. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds such people that they are helpless against Allah. فَلْيَدْعُ نَادِيَهُ. Let him call his counsel and his helpers. سَنَدْعُ الزَّبَانِيَةَ. we will call the gods of hell of Jahannam. And it is not even a comparison to make. Even if a whole Qabila comes, a whole tribe comes, and just one of the gods of Jahannam would be able to take care of that. So this shows the futile resistance, even if you can call that. It shows that this person does not have even a leg to stand on against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then finally, the end of the surah, Allah Azza wa Jal reminds the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as all believers, Kalla, no, or nay, la tuti'hu, do not obey him, do not obey him, do not follow his misguidance, do not compromise when it comes to your religion, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and do not care about what this person is doing. Wasjud waqtarib, and make the sujood and draw closer or near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And with that, the surah comes to an end. What we will do, following the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are about 14 or 15, some of the scholars, they, in terms of the different madhabs, they have different understandings, but there are certain places in the Quran, about 15 places, where there are sujood, a place in sajda, sajda tilawa, where when a verse is read, or this particular verse is read, it is established in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to make the sujood. And I would encourage us, following in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, for those of us that have the wudu, to make the sujood. And the way that we make the sujood is we face the qibla, and we make a sajda, and then we can make it 2 sajdas, then afterwards we make the taslim. You can make it 1 sajda or 2 sajdas, and then after that you make the taslim. So inshallah, for those of you that have wudu, you can do it. Let's do that.
Individually or?
Yes, individually. And this, just to conclude, it shows us as Muslims, this whole surah, it speaks about knowledge. And at the very end, it calls for the action of making the sujood. And it is one of the beautiful ways of linking knowledge to action. Knowledge itself, it will not save a person in the akhirah. It might even be against the person in the akhirah if they act different to it. But what helps a person is once that knowledge and that action is connected and you act upon the knowledge, like we did just now, and throughout the Quran, whenever we hear calls from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be truthful, to follow the truth, to not lie, to not cheat, we try to follow that in our actions. So inshallah, we will stop here today.